Good afternoon, friends. I welcome you all to our webinar on Product Backlog. I'm Saket Bansal. I run a company named iGen Bridge. I teach people project management, and I'm also coaching people for Agile. So I'm an Agile coach and project management trainer. Today we will talk about Product Backlog. We will discuss the basic characteristic of Product Backlog. We will talk about the good product backlog, what makes the product backlog good. We will also talk about how to groom the product backlog or the activities involved in creating a good product backlog. We will briefly discuss the common mistakes which people do while maintaining or grooming the product backlog. During this session, I will take 2 Q&A breaks and the third Q&A break at the end of the session. As you get your query, you can just write in the question box which is available in your GoToWebinar panel. I will look at those questions during my Q&A breaks. So as you get the query, you just type it and send it to me. I will look at them during the Q&A breaks. So this is how the agenda looks like. We will get into the details of product backlog. We will talk about the characteristic of good product backlog. We will look at the grooming or activities which are required to create or maintain a good product backlog, and we will look at some common mistakes which team or sprint are involved while creating and maintaining a product backlog. So let us look at Scrum before we get into the details of product backlog. A brief introduction of Scrum. In Scrum, we need a product backlog to start. So the Scrum projects requires a product backlog before we can start the first iteration, because product backlog gives us a list of work which the project team is expected to work on. So at the beginning, we have a product backlog. In Scrum project, at the beginning, we have a product backlog, and then we have a fixed sprint duration. So we say that these are the 20 items which team should be working on during this particular project, and this is your sprint duration. So you should be working in the cycles of 30 days, 20 days, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Maximum duration which is allowed in Scrum is 30 days. So we decide that this is your sprint duration, this is your iteration duration, and this is your work. This starts the Scrum project. Now after doing that, we select a part of product backlog, some selective product backlog item as per the priority. The high priority product backlog items get selected for to work on in the upcoming sprint. So we prepare a sprint goal on the basis of high priority product backlog item, and we pick them for the coming sprint. We convert these product backlog item into a sprint backlog. So we convert these product backlog item into an engineering task, so the team can work on during those 30 days. And at the end of that sprint cycle, at the end of that particular iteration, we deliver a potentially shippable product increment. So we start with the product backlog, we create a sprint backlog, which is a collection of engineering tasks out of that product backlog items which got selected for this particular sprint. At the end of a sprint, we deliver potentially shippable product increment. During the sprint, product owner along with the team keep grooming the product backlog. So you might have seen the coupons requirement or a story was coming in and getting added to the product backlog. So while team is working on a selective product backlog item for the current sprint, product owner is grooming the product backlog item in parallel. And during this particular work days, we also conduct a daily Scrum meeting to coordinate and collaborate the work among the team members. So this is how the Scrum delivers the software. Scrum projects starts with the product backlog, and they keep delivering potentially shippable product increment at the end of every sprint. So let us look at what this product backlog is all about. A product backlog is an ordered list of desired functionality of a product. So whatever functionality we want to get developed in a product, we list them in the order of priority, and we call this particular artifact a product backlog. Product backlog is one of the artifacts of Scrum. So it's an ordered list where the high priority product backlog items comes on the top, the low priority items falls at the bottom of the product backlog. The list items in the product backlog are called product backlog items. Now, product backlog is a common denominator between the development team and the product owner. What does it mean? Product backlog is a language which both of these parties can understand. Product owner also speaks the language of product backlog. Team can also understand the language of product backlog. But team would be working on the engineering task which is coming from the sprint backlog. But both of them understand the product backlog and they interact with each other by using the product backlog as a centralized theme. The other stakeholders, the people who are involved in the project, also look at product backlog in order to identify what are the features are scheduled in an upcoming sprint or in a given release. Because product backlog gives that information to all stakeholders or whoever is involved in the project. Now the list items which constitutes the product backlog are called product backlog items. So what is there in this product backlog item? Now majority of product backlog items are features. Features usually written in the form of stories, but it's not mandatory to write all the features in the form of story. Scrum is okay with even if you write those features in the form of use cases or any other form. So majority of product backlog items are features, but we may have other type of product backlog items. Now these features are written in the format which gives the direct value to the end user or purchaser or customer of our software. Beside these features, we may have work items or product backlog items like defect repair. So if we find a defect in a running or in a done story, we also need to prioritize the work of that particular defect. And we also need to schedule this particular defect in an upcoming sprint. So the defects are also part of product backlog and they also get prioritized and maintained by the product owner. Similarly, we may have some technical work. A technical work which is not giving direct value to the purchaser or customer, but it is giving an indirect value. For example, like you may want to upgrade your database to the latest version. You may want to upgrade your software, your user interface to the latest version of Explorer. So those kind of technical works also falls under product backlog. Product backlog may have items which are related to knowledge acquisitions. So if you want to test a particular architecture or if you want to run some spike stories in order to identify in order to acquire some of the learnings which are useful for future prioritization or future adaptation of your product, those kind of work also falls under product backlog item. So any work which product owner expects the team doing and which adds value directly or indirectly to the business can constitute product backlog item. Even if work related, if product owner wish to create a brochure, a document in order to help the installation or to promote the product, that can also constitute the product backlog item. Even the documentation work can also fall under product backlog item if it is not part of your done definition. So any item which product owner wants a team should be working on comes under product backlog item. Product owner prioritize them and team works on them. Acronym DEEP summarizes the characteristic of good product backlog. A good product backlog should be detailed appropriately, should be emergent in nature, should be estimated, and should be prioritized. Now, when we talk about detailed appropriately, as I was speaking about, that product backlog is an ordered list of product backlog item. Now, when we talk about order, it means that the high priority items are coming at the top of product backlog and the low priority items are at the bottom of product backlog. Now the items which are at the top need to be detailed enough. They should be sprint ready so that team can pick them during the sprint planning meeting and work on them. The items which are at the bottom of product backlog should not be detailed enough, because these are the items which may not get scheduled for the development in near future. And in Agile, we always talk about doing things at last responsible movement. So product backlog item should be detailed appropriately. The items which are expected to get scheduled for development in near future should be detailed enough. The items which are not expected to get scheduled in a near future should remain at gross level. They remain at an epic level because this is not the right time to detail them. In another language, if you talk a language of user stories, the stories which are of higher priority, which are expected to get scheduled in upcoming releases, upcoming iterations, should be of invest type. They should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimatable, small, and testable. The stories which are not expected to schedule in upcoming sprints because they are of low priority, they may remain at epic level. They may not be small enough, they may not be testable at this particular moment because this is not the right time for making them testable or small. So the items which are of higher priority should be sprint ready. So the definition of sprint ready, that any product backlog item which is of the top priority, which of a higher priority, which team can start working on, should be small enough so that it can be delivered in a one sprint. So items which are at the top are the one which will get worked on soon, and they should be detailed enough. They should have a testable condition attached to it. They should be small enough. They should be sprint ready. The items which are at the bottom, not necessary to be detailed enough because they will get elaborated at the last or at the right moment, and which is not now. Now product backlog should be emergent in nature. Product backlog never get completed. It never get baseline, it never get frozen. Unlike our traditional requirement document where we sign off the requirement document, product backlog never gets signed off. It continuously get updated, it emerges because we continuously keep getting the request from the market, business, and we also keep learning we keep learning about our own planning. So on the basis of our own learning, which could be technological learning, which could be team learning, or on the basis of market learning, we keep emerging, we keep modifying or enhancing our product backlog. So if we look at a product backlog, the new items may get inserted during the sprint, like the example which I gave initially where the coupon got inserted while the team was working on the current sprint. So new items get inserted during the sprint, and that is how they keep the product backlog keep emerging. We may refine, as we spoke, that the items which are not at priority may remain at a gross level. They are not sliced enough. They are not sprint ready. But as their priority is increasing, if we find that now the priority of this particular item is high and it should be taken in upcoming sprint, it needs to be refined. So the refinement also keeps happening continuously. So good product backlog keep emerging, it keep getting new items, it keep getting refined, reprioritization keep happening during the sprint, and also we may remove some of the product backlog items. The third characteristic, a good product backlog should be estimated. Now all the product backlog item should have a number which can represent the cost associated with developing that particular product backlog item. Having this particular number attached helps a product owner to prioritize this particular product backlog item, because if I know that this is of a high cost and the product owner can also identify the value of that particular product backlog item, if he look at the value plus and cost ratio, he can take a decision related to prioritization. Product owner may also get an idea about how much refinement is needed in this particular product backlog item. If the product backlog item is of a bigger size, he gets an input that it needs to be refined before it gets scheduled in upcoming sprint. Now each item, the items especially which are of higher priority, should have a size associated with them. The sizing of product backlog is usually done in the form of either story points or in the form of ideal days. So the items which are scheduled in the current release should have story points or ideal days attached with it. You may have some very big items which are not expected to get scheduled in upcoming 2 releases. So I am saying releases, not sprints. So there could be few items which may get scheduled in a release at a later point of time. The item of such nature may not have a sufficient detail where you can put a number against the requirement. In those cases, you may use a t-shirt sizing where you just give them a ranking of large, extra large or medium and keep them until and do an estimation at the responsible moment when the prioritization of those particular items are increasing and they are expected to come into the upcoming release. So in summary, all product backlog items should have size number associated, but the items which are at the bottom of product backlog and which are not expected to get scheduled in upcoming releases may not have estimate number attached, or may have an estimate which is of a very high which is of a very high variance, like which is of at a higher level, which is just giving them a category like large, medium, extra large. The items which are coming at the top of product backlog will have a higher accuracy estimate number. As we go in the bottom direction of the product backlog, we may have a like uncertainty in estimation, because as the items becoming bigger, they are not detailed enough. The accuracy of estimation decreases as we go down the product backlog, and accuracy increases as we go in the up of the product backlog, because the items which are expected to get scheduled in upcoming sprints are well detailed and their estimate number attached to them should be of higher accuracy. The fourth characteristic of product backlog: the product backlog should be prioritized. Now, since the definition of product backlog itself talks about that it's a ordered list of all the desired functionality, so the product backlog items should be prioritized, and items which are expected to get delivered in a current release should be prioritized well. Items which are not expected to get scheduled in upcoming releases may remain with no priority, or very little effort we should spend in prioritizing items which are at a very long time horizon. So for example, if I have a release which I need to give in 2015, I may not prioritize the items for the release of 2015. But the release which is for the current release which I have to give in next 3 or 4 months, the items for this particular release should be prioritized well. So in general, product backlog is a prioritized list of product backlog of functionality, but the functionality which is expected to get delivered in an upcoming release are prioritized well. The remaining functionality may remain at a gross level, because we should not be spending much effort in prioritizing those items which are not expected to get scheduled for development in near future. Okay, so let's see if we have any query. How we can mention dependencies in product backlog? No direct way of presenting it. In general, we recommend that we should have a product backlog items which does not have a dependency with each other. But in practice, you may have a natural order of flow. For example, you may want to create the record before you start searching it. In order to visualize those dependencies, there are techniques like doing a user story mapping. So by doing a user story mapping, or by creating a story map, we can visualize the dependencies between the product backlog items. But in general, we do not have columns with saying that this particular product backlog is dependent on etc, etc, and etc, and these three will go together. If our product backlog is needing those kind of remarks, then we need to relook the way we have sliced our functionality. So in general, Agile team uses the user story mapping in order to visualize the sequence of development of product backlog items. Now, in Agile, we do development which is not in the order of natural, which may not be following natural order of development. For example, we may create a search screen before creating the insert screen. In those particular cases, we can in those particular cases, we can create the dummy data. So that we need to communicate to the product owner that if we do not follow the natural order of development, then we need to create some stories, some work which would be throwaway. A second question, how we can estimate if we follow different scales like story point or extra large, large. See, for a given release, we need to have all the user stories or items in a one scale only. Since product backlog is a live document and it will remain forever till the time you are working on the product, in that particular case, you may have items which may not get scheduled until 3 or 4 releases. And those items may, for example, right now you are creating a job site, but at a given future, you want to have an iPhone app which allows a person to apply for a job. But you know that as of now, you don't have a budget and time frame decided for that particular app. So for that particular story, we may have another size which just tells us the quantum at a gross level. Now, but for a given release, like you were talking about estimating a release date, for a given release, we need to have all items estimated in story point or in ideal days. For a portfolio level, which you want to consider at a later stage, which you just want to compare that does this feature add value to my product, those kind of items can remain either not estimated or estimated at a higher level. But for a given release, you should have all the items which are falling in that particular release estimated at one scale. Okay, do we have any tool in this area, creation of product backlog item? There are various tools, and there was another discussion which was happening in our LinkedIn group also. There are various tools and there are various Excel templates which helps you in creating product backlog and managing product backlog items. Tools from like Zira, Mingle, there are many. So there are many. Okay, now in Scrum, Scrum Master is responsible for managing Scrum. How is responsible for coupons and how get affected the estimates? Okay, now what I understand is that this question is trying to ask that since Scrum Master is responsible for managing project, what happens if new things keeps getting added to the product backlog? So if that is the question, like in Agile we always talk about that we welcome the change till the time it adds value to the business. Since we welcome the change, we need to accommodate the change of requirements. There will be a new requirement coming in during the development, and there should be reduction in the scope as well as the priorities get changed. So as a Scrum Master, you just need to keep things transparent. You need to show that what size of work has been added in your release and what is the velocity of your team. And according to velocity and the size of work in your release backlog, what are the expected release dates? And on the basis of these two information, product owner takes the call. He decides that does he want to include all these features or may want to remove or reduce the X number of features so we can meet the time boxed release date. Does product backlog have version depending on the item scheduled on iteration release? Okay, does it? I think this question is talking about like when we schedule some item for an iteration, do we create a version of product backlog? If this is the question, in a product backlog itself, we can put a column which specifies that in which particular iteration this product backlog item has been scheduled, and we should be only scheduling upcoming 2 iterations or maximum 3, not giving a forecast for a complete project. So that much we can do, and once the iteration planning has been done, the selected items moves from a ready to ongoing. So product backlog is a collection of ready product backlog items. Ready product backlog items means the items which are ready to be worked on. Okay, the another question is, if defect needs to be fixed in the same sprint in which it was found, is it really a good idea to add it into the product backlog? Now, defects which are found in the current sprint should be fixed immediately. And the definition of defect here is the defect which is found on the done story. So usually once you marked everything done, you did all level of testing, and after that, after subsequent iterations, like after running 2-3 iterations, you find something which says that there was a problem. For those defects, we should include them into a product backlog. But the defects which we are finding, ideally the bug which we are finding in undone stories should not be categorized as a defect. We can use some other term for that, but those are the points which team should fix it before they declare the story done. Once the story is done, and if we find some escape defect, or while doing some exploratory testing in the subsequent iteration, if we find some defect, those are the one which get prioritized, and those are the one which becomes a part of product backlog. Is the sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog. Now, sprint backlog, we create sprint backlog for the selected product backlog item. So product backlog is a collection of product backlog item. For a sprint, during the sprint planning meeting, we select high priority product backlog item and we create a sprint backlog. So the source of sprint backlog is product backlog items, but the language of sprint backlog is the language of team. The language of product backlog is a language of product owner which team can also understand. So team understand a slice of it, and then they detail it into an engineering language which they called it sprint backlog. But the source of sprint backlog is like the origin of sprint backlog is the selected product backlog item. Okay, who has the final say on what goes in a sprint backlog? What if there is a disagreement with product owner? Okay, and how long is an iteration? So I will take the second question first. How long is an iteration? Iteration is if we are following Scrum, the maximum allowed size for Scrum iteration, which is called sprint, is 30 calendar days, and so it should be 30 calendar days or less. Now what if there is a disagreement between a product owner and a team while creating a sprint goal? So while creating a sprint goal, while they are selecting the stories which can come under the given sprint. Now this here the Scrum Master roles comes into the picture. Scrum Master need to manage both the parties. He need to, like as far as Scrum is concerned, Scrum says the team declares their capacity and product owner declares their priority. Now the balance need to be arrived mutually. Now there is no like product owner cannot say that this all you must plan in a sprint, and the team also need to explain why this cannot be done. So by having a size associated with the product backlog item helps us in creating this balance. And even if you overcommit, but in Agile we always talk about continuous pace, a sustainable pace. So even if you overcommit, you will not be able to maintain a sustainable pace of the same delivery. And this is what a Scrum Master need to explain to all the stakeholders, because he needs to explain the team is committing on the basis of their capacity and we need to work on a sustainable pace. We should not be targeting that, okay, let us do some overtime this iteration and then we will manage the remaining iterations in a normal way. So Scrum Master has to manage the conflict. Scrum Master should educate both the parties about the importance of preparing a sprint backlog. So no direct answer, but it has to be mutually agreed between the product owner and the team, and team is the one who is deciding or declaring their capacity, and product owner is the one who is giving the priorities. So we move to the next section of the presentation. Now we spoke about a good product backlog. We spoke about that good product backlog should be detailed appropriately, should be emergent, should be estimated, should be prioritized. From where and from like how we create a good product backlog or how we maintain good product backlog. So activities which are required in order to create and maintain a good product backlog is called product backlog grooming. And this activity will constitute activities like inserting or identifying a new item into product backlog. So if you get a new requirement from business, or if you get a new requirement from your team during a retrospective meeting, they think that this is a technical improvement they should do. For example, they must migrate to a newer version of Oracle. So on the basis of new item which got identified during our exploration, the product backlog need to be adjusted. So we may insert a new product backlog item into a product backlog. We refine the epics which are getting a priority, which are getting a higher priority, which are expected to get scheduled in upcoming sprints. So we refine them. So refining also falls under a grooming activity. We do a reprioritization. So the product owner keeps doing a reprioritization on the basis of various feedback he gets from stakeholders, from market, from team. So reprioritization also falls under product backlog grooming. And deletion. So a lot of time we keep getting a good amount of wish list item in our product backlog, but at a particular time, continuously, a product owner should also lean the product backlog. So he should also look for an opportunity where he can delete some of the product backlog items which are not adding the desired value to the product. So this all falls under product backlog grooming. And a sizing of these new items. So because let us look at again deep. So detailing, emerging, adding, removing, estimating, and prioritizing. So these all activities are called product backlog grooming. So we need to size, we need to re-estimate the refined stories. For example, there was an epic which got divided into 5 stories. Now these 5 stories needs to be re-estimated. The item which we are adding, like the question which was asked, somebody is adding coupon. So what should we do? We should also size it. So grooming also involved the sizing of newly identified product backlog items. And if we groom the product backlog well, we will always know what is the amount of work left in our current release. Quantum of work, the prioritization. So who does the grooming? Now grooming is a collective effort, but product owner is the leader of this grooming activity. He is the one who is responsible. He is the one who keeps thinking about this grooming. He may invite the internal and external stakeholders and team and Scrum Master as and when required. So he should involve not only team but also the stakeholders, because the product backlog, the input for the product backlog is also coming from the external stakeholders. He should also take time from the team for doing and grooming activities. Now there is a Scrum recommends that up to 10% of the team's time, up to 10% of their capacity can be utilized for grooming related activities. So product owner should lead the grooming activity. He should involve internal and external stakeholders. He should also involve team and Scrum Master for grooming the product backlog. And the team should, by rule, in general, teams should be allocating nearby or up to 10% of their time for grooming the product backlog. Now, when does grooming take place? Scrum is not recommending any specific meeting or any specific ceremony where we all come and groom the product backlog, because we only have 4 ceremonies. We start with the sprint planning meeting, we do a daily stand-up, and at the end we do sprint review and sprint retrospective. So when we do grooming, like there is no activity, there is no ceremony which is allocated or assigned for grooming the product backlog. Now this should be continuous activity. There could be various approach team can take. Product owner might schedule a regular grooming workshop. He may schedule that every Friday at this particular time we will have a product backlog grooming meeting. So everybody is clear about that this is the time which they have to allocate for grooming. So while they are committing, while the team is committing for their sprint goals, they also understand that there is X amount of hours they need to spend in grooming activity, so they commit accordingly. Team may decide to do a incremental grooming. So incremental grooming is like at the end of daily Scrum meeting, they may spend say 15 to 20 minutes of time in grooming the newly identified or newly refined product backlog items. So at the end of a daily Scrum meeting, Scrum Master, product owner may call for grooming or for ask a team for an input for newly refined product backlog items, and the complete team or selected team members, whoever is linked with that particular product backlog item, may participate in that grooming activity. And some level of grooming does happen in sprint review meeting also. When during the sprint review meeting, when we are demonstrating the product backlog item to the stakeholders, we get various inputs and various future requirements get reprioritized or refined during sprint review meeting as well. So grooming is a continuous exercise. It keeps happening at a regular interval. Two possible approach: a product owner can schedule a regular interval grooming meeting, or the team can take another approach where they do incremental grooming, where they spend some amount of time after daily Scrum meeting for grooming. Common mistakes. Sometimes we start thinking a product backlog as a requirement specification document. We tend to, there are cases I have seen a team doing it. They have a big requirement document which is baseline, which is signed, and now they are creating a product backlog out of that requirement document, and there is no there is no expectation of emerging or reprioritizing during the project life cycle. So we should not treat a product backlog as a baseline requirement document. We should not take an approach where we just convert the baseline requirement document into a product backlog, because product backlog should remain emerging. And the other problem is, since we welcome change, we may end up getting a good amount of wish list item in our product backlog. So product owner because grooming a good amount of wish list item, even if they are lying at the bottom of product backlog, will be time consuming, and it may generate waste if those items are never getting scheduled for the development. So we know our capacity, and we may have a rule like whatever which cannot be developed in next, say, 3 years, or which cannot be visualized happening in next 3 years, should not be forming of an active product backlog item, or something which is not of a priority. So team should identify their criteria of reducing or leaning the product backlog. So they should keep removing waste out of product backlog. They should have a way of identifying non-value adding features which are just lying in product backlog, and should get rid of them continuously. A lot of time we neglect grooming. So neglect grooming results in a lot of time gets spent in discussing or grooming the stories while doing sprint planning meeting. So if you don't groom, like if the stories are not groomed well, and product owner comes with the product backlog items which are not groomed, which are not sprint ready, team as well as product owner may spend a good amount of time during sprint planning meeting for grooming those product backlog item, and the side effect of this would be that they will not get sufficient time to do a sprint planning meeting, or the activities which are expected to do in sprint planning. So they end up doing grooming in sprint planning, but the activities which were expected to be performed, like the complete team making the task list together, get neglected. So we should do a continuous grooming. And doing things early, we should not target to refine, prioritized or size well the product backlog items which are not expected to get scheduled in a near future. So if you have few items which are not getting expected scheduled in an upcoming release, we should not be spending time in refining or grooming those product backlog items. We do say that product backlog is a prioritized list of all desired features, but the features which are of low priority may not necessary to be ordered in the low priority. They can remain at the bottom, and we should not be putting too much energy in prioritizing them at the bottom. So before I take questions, let me finish the quiz. The quiz I posted over our website. So there was a pre-webinar quiz. So let us see some results, and then we take the Q&A. So there was the first question, which of the following is a product backlog item? And this was the question which got a maximum diversified view. The people, some of you are thinking, let us look at each and every item. A, the payment interface may get delayed because of the dependency. Now this is not a product backlog item. This is kind of a risk. Create UI for search job, so user story. Now creating a UI for a user story looks like a sprint task, because a user story which is like a search job could be should be treated as a product backlog item, not create UI for search job user story. So B also doesn't fit. Move to the latest version of the Oracle. Now this particular product backlog item is technical work, but can be prioritized, should be scheduled on the basis of priority by the product owner. Let us look at the D, create database script for the search job user story. So D also looks like B, where we have a user story and then we are creating a task for those user story. So the right answer for this particular question is C, where we say move to the latest version of Oracle. Now this is a technical work type of product backlog item. Unlike majority of our product backlog item would be features, but we can have a technical work as a product backlog item and move to the latest version of the Oracle, which is applicable for the complete project, is a technical work type of product backlog item. Now this is just a definition and most of you got it right. A prioritized list of desired product functionality is called product backlog. So most of you got it right. Product backlog items we plan to work on soon should be small in size. So most of you got it right. They should be small in size. The product backlog items which are which are of low priority, they remain large, they are epics and they are less detailed. So rest of them are for the items which are of low priority. When the product backlog get completed or frozen, so it never gets frozen. Most of you got it right. Most of you voted that it is a live document, and that is where the emergent nature of product backlog is all about. Who is responsible for grooming the product backlog? So it's a collaborative effort, but yes, the product owner is the leader of this effort. So it's a collaborative effort. Everybody must contribute. The sizing can only be done by the team. But yes, product owner is the leader of this grooming exercise, because product owner is the one who controls the product backlog. So I use some references for Mike Cohen's presentation, especially the images which were related to team and product owner. And we conduct PMI-acp training in major cities of India, and our next training happening this weekend at Hyderabad. So I am taking 2 days of classroom session at Hyderabad on 18th and 19th May. And after that, we have a training at Bangalore on 1st and 2nd June, and then Delhi. So we keep doing PMI-acp training in Delhi, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. And do join our community. We have a LinkedIn group called PMI-acp Agile Certification Made Easy. Join in and start discussing your queries related to certification, related to Agile. That will help all of us to learn and do this certification faster. And we do have a Facebook page, and we do have a YouTube channel where we upload the recording of all our webinars, and we do have some of the interesting videos talking about even product backlog and various concepts of Agile. So do subscribe or visit to our YouTube channel. You will find good amount of learning resources. Okay, let us take queries, and I am Saket Bansal, and you can reach me via email, via phone, over website, and I am quite active on LinkedIn. So if you are linked with LinkedIn, you can reach me and discuss any of your queries. So let me take the queries. Okay, so here we are. Reprioritization as a part of product backlog grooming should not be led to alter the sprint goal, right? Okay, now that's a good question, and we spoke about sprint in our last webinar. And in sprint we says that no change during the sprint. So whatever you have picked for the current sprint should not be changed. The reprioritization is happening for the future sprints. So we should have a balance between flexibility and stability. So we should not be changing the selected product backlog items for the current sprint. Once the sprint is committed, we need to follow that. So you are right. Okay, second question. Who decides when grooming has to be done? Is it product owner or Scrum Master? Now, grooming is, team should discuss this because they need to spend a good amount of time, and by a Scrum guide, creator of Scrums are recommending that up to 10% of the time can go into grooming. Now, they know that they need to spend time. They know that it is essential activity. Now we need to identify when and how we should do it. So they should derive a approach. So once identified, they should follow it. For example, once you decide that we will have a product backlog grooming activity every week, just follow it and make it as a part of your rhythm. So it should be something which helps team in doing it. So there is no hard and fast rule like it has to be done as a part of a grooming workshop, or it has to be done as after the daily Scrum meeting. But team should decide or identify whatever helps them. But once decided, they should follow it. But first they need to understand the importance of grooming. So once they know that it is an essential activity, they should identify the way of doing it. Estimates are also part of grooming. So is it development team who is solely responsible for estimates? Yes. So estimates are part of development, and estimates are done by the development team. And again, the product backlog item estimates are different from sprint backlog item estimates. So product backlog item estimation is done via following relative sizing in the form of story points or ideal days, while the sprint backlog items get estimated by following an ideal hours. So estimation of a product backlog item is done by the team, and they are the only one who should be doing it. Now moving into latest version of Oracle is not, it's a part of retrospective. So you may identify this action, this item as in a retrospective. So in a retrospective, you only identify the process improvements. So once we identify, we need to prioritize it, we need to schedule it. So it can go into it can go into the product backlog. Do you have a plan for PMP training in Bangalore? Okay, that's we will discuss, Govind. Okay, yes, we are thinking of starting a PMP training in Bangalore, and we are also thinking of starting a PMI-ACP training in Chennai. And I am thinking of scheduling a PMI-ACP training in the somewhere at the end or mid of June in Chennai. So you will get those updates. Don't worry. Okay, who does project management task in agile projects? No one. Okay, now say in agile, team is the manager. So team plays the role of the managers because they are self-organizing team. So team should do a lot of management work which are related to managing their own tasks. So if you talk about the project management, the role of a project manager, the project manager work get divided at a various levels. Like some slice goes to the product owner because traditionally project manager is responsible for making budget, schedule, etc. So those goes to a product owner. Project manager is also expected to groom and coach the team. That goes to the Scrum Master, and project manager was also expected to monitor and guide and give a task to the team members. The team does that work their own. So the traditional role of a project manager get divided in all the three roles of Scrum. Some part goes to the Scrum Master, part goes to the product owner, and good part goes to the team itself. What about waterfall model, documents, risk, issue, register, stakeholder agreement? How are these handled in agile projects? So there are approaches like, for example, in agile, we follow an organic risk management. So we manage the risk organically, like our Scrum framework helps us in identifying and managing risk without doing an extra conscious effort for managing risks. So there are ways. So the risk gets managed organically. Stakeholders, in agile we talk about stakeholders engagement rather than stakeholders management. So the approach is different, but everything has to be done. So stakeholders needs to be kept satisfied, but approach is like we engage the stakeholders by inviting them on a sprint review meetings. So the Scrum framework where we have review meetings, retrospective, interaction with people helps us in managing stakeholders and managing risk and issues. So issues are impediments which are managed by Scrum Master. Any other query on product backlog? And you can participate in our online communities. Okay, what we have when we have sprints in parallel in Scrum, how can we handle dependencies? Now, in case of a multi-Scrum projects, we do need to identify the dependencies, especially if they are between the two Scrum teams, and we may need to put some feeding buffer as well, which can ensure that dependencies get resolved before you schedule the next work into the upcoming in your current sprint. So there should be, like, Scrum is the meeting which helps us in coordinating the dependencies between Scrum teams, and it requires a good amount of interaction between the product owners. Now, ideally, it is recommended if the multiple teams are working on the same product, they should have a same product backlog, and the same this product backlog is managed and controlled by one person. So this person may have support from various individuals. He may have some other product owners, but there should be a chief product owner who takes the complete view. So now, if you have a chief product owner and if you have a one product backlog, then while creating, and the second thing you should do is that you should have a same rhythm, like all the Scrum team should be starting their work and finishing their work on the same date. So if you have all these things placed, then while you create a goal for respective Scrum teams, dependencies can be visualized well. But yes, once you get into like a multiple team scenario, you need to put especially product owner team. So product management team or product owner team needs to put a good amount of effort in identifying and managing the dependencies so they can prioritize well. And while doing this, they will also take a help from technical team, because it also a part of grooming. So the end result is a new priority. So it happens by way of managing the single product backlog. But you may have an identifier where you specify that this story is dependent on that story, and if you have a dependencies, it's better to have some kind of feeding buffers which ensures that your goals does not get affected while you are waiting for somebody else to deliver the stories. Any other question? Okay, so I think we are also reaching our time box for this particular webinar. So thanks for joining in, and do visit our YouTube channel. You will get the recording of this particular session, and you can post the subsequent queries in the YouTube thread as well. We can have a discussion in that thread or in our LinkedIn or Facebook community. Thanks for joining, and I'm Saket Bansal from iGenBridge.